folks, welcome to Your Inspired Life. I'm your show host, Amy Hager. If it's your first time here, welcome. I created the show to help you stay on track with your health goals. Just consider it a place to come every day for just a little piece of motivation or a tip. You never know when you hear the right thing that helps you really focus in and dial in. We know it can be really challenging to stay on top of your health goals and not slip up. So I'm putting together all of my tips over the last 20 years as a dietitian and health coach to help you stay on track with your goals. Because we know once you get the small goals mastered, those big ones fall into place as well. And right now we're at the beginning of an 8-week program called Shape Up for Summer. This first week, we're focusing on different structures and systems to help you really feel organized as you move your way through these 8 weeks. And today I want to go over a topic called, what is better, structure or flexibility? If you think about it, asking that question could be one of those dividing topics. I mean, are you team structure or are you team flexibility, right? I think everyone's going to have an opinion of what they prefer. But I do have an opinion on this matter and I want to share it with you. But first, let's really go over what that means. What is being structured and what are the pros and cons of each one? So the benefits of structure is that it really outlines what to do. It gives you step-by-step instructions. It tells you what's allowed, what's not allowed. It's really simplifying the process for you. But, it can lead to feelings of boredom and burnout. So structure will limit your options and choices, and your decisions will either be predetermined or they're sort of black and white, yes or no. Now, flexibility is the opposite, right? So it allows for more options, more personal preferences to come into play, and it opens the door to overwhelm, though. Decision fatigue and even getting lackadaisical, just kind of getting a little bit too carried away with your options. So in my experience, people gravitate towards programs and challenges and apps because they want that structure. They sort of crave that structure to kind of tell them what to do. But what happens over time, it works out for the first few weeks and some people end up sticking with something for 80 days or 90 days. But what happens in the long term is that they feel that burnout and they feel that boredom of following a program, and so they fall off track. So as they make their way through the program, they start to crave more and more flexibility. What camp do you fall into? You might take a look back at your life in general and your habits day to day. Do you tend to have the same thing for breakfast? When you go out to dinner, do you tend to order the same favorite meal? Or do you really order something different all the time? Do you always crave something different at your meals? You can't stand leftovers, perhaps. You just want something new and fresh every day. So that can kind of clue you into what camp you might fall into. But regardless of what camp that you're in, there is some research to consider. We know that decision fatigue is real and that having multiple decisions at your disposal can lead to overwhelm, and that having decisions planned out in advance can make it a lot easier to follow a plan. We also know from research that the more food options are available, the more we find food interesting and fascinating and appealing. So consider a buffet. At a buffet, there could be 100 choices available, and then at the meal, you just got your one choice. So it's not as exciting, there's not more and more things to try, so you don't eat as much as you would off of a buffet with a lot of interesting, appealing choices. We also know that it's easier to establish habits when constant repetition is applied. So for example, working out at the same time each day, multiple days in a row, is a lot more effective at establishing a long-term habit than trying to walk for 30 minutes whenever you can throughout the week. Automatic habits are a product of repetition over time, and that's really important when you're trying to establish something new. If your goal is weight loss, what's the better strategy? To stay really, really structured or to have more flexibility to fit your lifestyle? It's a great question. My advice is to start off with as much structure as possible for as long as possible. By maximizing repetition early, you're really increasing your chances of turning your actions into long-term habits. You'll be less burdened by decision fatigue and overwhelm, having simplified your routine with less options. When you start a new program, you're in a more optimistic state of mind, and that's something that you can leverage to give you more momentum at the beginning. And you might not even miss the flexibility right in the first few weeks. So reserve using your flexibility until it starts to become uncomfortable, until you start getting annoyed at your meals, or until you start feeling limited by your options. If those feelings start to creep in a little bit more, then let's start using flexibility, absolutely. But wait, hold off until then, because that way you're gonna get more time doing repetitive behaviors. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to establish those patterns really solidly. So an example that might pop up is going out to dinner. I urge you not to use dining out as the life excuse. Use dining out as an option where you can still continue to follow your patterns unless you're in a situation where those options are completely gone. So if you're at a restaurant and you can still order meat, vegetable, starch, absolutely do that. But if you're at a baby shower where there's just maybe just little sandwiches and cupcakes, then you can use that flexibility in that moment and then go back to your meal pattern afterwards. But definitely whatever it takes to keep going with the same pattern that you're establishing in weeks 1 and 2. Flexibility is definitely your friend, and it's definitely a relationship that you want to establish later on in your program. But for now, you need to spend more time with your friends, repetition and time. So repetition and time are going to be your best friends, and flexibility is that relationship you can establish later on. Flexibility will keep things interesting for you, but it also has the potential to undermine your habits. So just think about this example. When you go away on vacation, I've talked to so many clients that have started a routine, whether it's Weight Watchers or tracking food or just cutting back on fast food, and then suddenly they're on vacation and the only option is to go out to dinner. And all it takes is 1 week of being on vacation. When they come back, they find it extremely difficult to get back on track. That's how much time it takes. Not very many days to get off track of your habits when you're really starting out. And it's definitely dependent on your experience. If you have years behind you of healthy patterns, then it might be easier to incorporate flexibility sooner. But if you don't have those years behind you, and I'm using years on purpose because I think it does take years of practice to get really solid in your habits. So if you don't have those years behind you, then I would say stay with more structured eating, stay with more structured exercise until a life circumstance is causing you to become flexible. And then be flexible in the moment and then go back to your structure. And then revisit this, each month as you continue your habits, because things can change and you can become more flexible over time. What happens if you start to get burnt out and you're only in week 3? Because that's a reality, right? You might be doing baked chicken, potato, and a veggie. And maybe your veggie's limited right now to broccoli, green beans, or salad. And so you're really feeling like you're running out of options because you're doing all the combinations, but you're trying to keep your structure, but you're getting bored. Well, you might be able to expand on some of these. So if you want to stay with chicken, maybe it's just a different way of cooking your chicken. You could do shredded chicken, you could do grilled chicken, you could do kebab chicken, you could do marinated chicken, you could do 5 different flavors of chicken, 8 different flavors of chicken. So just trying to really mix that up. And maybe when you're ready, you can add in pork, or you might be able to add in beef or add in seafood. So you can kind of switch those proteins around, but using all the different varieties, cooking techniques, preparation techniques, and flavors. And that will keep a lot of variety, and you can still do the meat, vegetable, starch. Same thing with the starch. If you're tired of potato and sweet potato, you might be able to branch out to another type of vegetable starch, like beans, a whole assortment of beans out there. You could do corn on the cob, you could do winter squash. And so you're still getting a carb serving and still doing like a vegetable carb serving that way. And then for veggies, if your salads are getting boring, you might branch out and just start doing chopped salads or shredded salads instead of the leafy green salads, or maybe mixing up this type of salad dressing that you're using. Or you could do different types of veggies. Instead of broccoli and green beans, trying cabbage, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, bok choy. So there's a lot of variety within the structure of the food plate method. And then as you get a lot more comfortable with that, then you might be able to branch out and do mixed meals. Reserve that for when you absolutely need it. So there's some food for thought, right? And congrats on making it your way through week 1. There's definitely a lot of focus involved, getting really organized. There's a lot of thinking involved and usually a lot of stumbling blocks. I want to talk a little bit more about slip-ups too. Definitely can start considering how you plan to stay structured over the weekend. Usually when people are starting off on a program, the weekend is that first challenge of a little bit less structure. If you're used to going to work and having a certain routine during the weekday, the weekend kind of opens it wide up, and it can be your first challenge with how do I stay structured with a little bit less daily structure. So definitely leave me a comment below how you plan to stay structured this weekend, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. All right, take care.